to another episode of Magic 3D Printing. Today we're going to talk about something sort of related to 3D printing but a little different, and that is airbrushing. It's something I've been interested in getting into for a while. I had the pleasure of talking to some people online who have actually been doing airbrushing for, gosh, I think over 5 years. And so this is my first, I haven't tried the equipment yet, this is my first foray in. But I've mentioned the whole idea of airbrushing to some of the people online, and well, to be honest with you, I got a pretty good reaction. So today what we're actually going to do is go over all the things that I purchased and exactly, you know, the pricing and the availability. So stick around and let's take a look at airbrushing. Okay, so let me preface this by saying I do not know a lot about airbrushing, but I think I've gotten some pretty good advice. One example of that is when you get your first air compressor. Now if you've got a big air compressor out in the garage, I understand you can put an adapter on it and it'll work just great. But if you're like me, I do 3D printing, I don't have a lot of that stuff. So this upper part here is actually the compressor, and this whole compressor combo is used very commonly by a lot of the kits you're going to find online. The one tip that I did get is if you're going to buy an inexpensive compressor, definitely get something with a tank on it. That way the pressure that's going into the airbrush is consistent because it's coming out of the actual tank and not chugging as it's getting pumped out through the compressor itself. This also has a little connector on here to really get rid of moisture that's accumulated. We also have a dial here that shows you your air pressure, and you can actually gauge that back with this dial right here. Other than that, it obviously has your hose, which I believe is like a 1/8 inch hose. It's pretty narrow, but apparently it's pretty easy to drive about 20 pounds of consistent pressure to airbrush. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is airbrushes. This airbrush kit was basically recommended to me because it's a good beginner brush. It will do a nice job, and it's versatile. So I looked up that brand, and again I'll link all this below. What I liked specifically about this was that this kit is sort of two kits in one. Most airbrushes, like this one here, basically will have a cup similar to this mounted on the top, like so. And as you fill it, it's got a metal cap on top, you fill it and basically do your painting. Then there's another type that's called a gravity feed, and which is something like this. It's also sometimes called a siphon feed. But yeah, in fact this is the siphon feed. So with this you can use obviously larger amounts of paint. And each one has its advantages and disadvantages. In this particular case though, this airbrush that I chose has an inlet on the side right here. And so you can adapt either one of these to this. And what that does, it actually gives you another advantage, and that is when you're airbrushing, if you've got a fixed a tank on the top here, you have to be a little careful about how much tipping you do. With this particular model, since it mounts on the side, if you're going to be painting up at a sharp angle, you can actually adjust this so that it's actually not tipping in the least. Conversely, if you're going down and printing down quite a ways, you don't have to worry about spilling because again, this can be adjusted and set at an appropriate angle. And the same goes with the siphon feed. This is all, since it mounts the same way, you can adjust this to make sure you're getting as much paint as possible, since you've got a little tube inside that dips toward one side of the container. So this, again, I'll link this below, but this is a great beginner brush. I understand that it's a Chinese knockoff. It's a labeled version that you'll see in the description, but the quality is decent. It's great for a beginner. And the needles and nozzles, and for you guys who are 3D printers, this also has a nozzle. The needles come in various sizes. I believe pretty much a 0.2, 0.3, and 0.5. the nozzle has to be changed out to the appropriate size. But this, I understand, is the quality is good. It's easy to get replacement needles. You can get them from AliExpress, dirt cheap, and I'll show you a few of those in just a minute. So you can use and abuse this brush until you learn the strokes. You basically get control. This is also sort of interesting. This release on top, if you press this down, it's going to do nothing more than spray air. As you pull it back, it will release more and more paint. So this is a nice style, I think, to begin with, because the other style, you basically have a knob underneath and you have to manually adjust that knob. So great, great pen, and this airbrush only ran about 22 bucks. So a good value and a great beginner piece. All right, so let's move on. Some of the inexpensive parts I was telling you can get from AliExpress. This is the way that you'll typically see a needle come in. It'll be marked with a size. This one in particular is a 0.3. And then you have these little capsules that contain the brand new nozzles, because the part that you actually exchange is pretty tiny. And again, these will be marked 0.3, 0.4, or 0.2, 0.5. So those are very inexpensive. Again, I'll give you a link down below so you can check out the very different prices. I bought a scad of these things though, and I think I paid a total of 20 bucks with shipping. Another thing that I was given some advice on is get yourself a quick connect. This is basically hooks up to the air hose, and once it's there, it's very, very fast to hook up your airbrush. It's going to be a pain if you've got to twist it around and mess with it when it's got paints in it and you're trying to get it apart for cleaning. So I understand if you want to save yourself from speaking a lot of bad words, get yourself a quick connect. That's going to go a long way in saving your hair. Next thing I want to talk about is cleanup. This is a cleaning pot. Again, pretty inexpensive. It has a holder on one side to actually rest your brush in, and the brush will actually enter this hole in the side, and you blow air and discharge paint, discharge any of the thinning or cleaning solutions. That'll all go into this tank. So that's a handy item. Mine came with some cleaning tools, which I thought was pretty neat. Brushes and pretty much like the needles of various sizes that'll fit in and help you clean the airbrush out. Then we have thinner and cleaner. Now, I read some articles, since I do a lot of research on this stuff. A lot of guys will make their own out of things like alcohol, Windex, different types of thinners and stuff. But then I also read some articles where people had paid a few bucks to buy, ones from the factory, and they were surprised at the difference. So, it's new to me. I'm not taking any chances with mixing my own chemicals, and so we're going to use some standard airbrush cleaner and thinner. You'll notice also that the thinner bottle is much smaller because you're going to use this in drops. This is not like the actual cleaner that you're going to sort of rinse and blow your airbrush out with. Next thing I want to talk about is paints. In the beginning, you want to get yourself a basic set of paints that cover most of the primaries. These are going to be a little difficult to see. Let me set a few of them out. You want your basic primary colors. So you're going to want your black and white. You're going to want greens, or excuse me, blues, yellows, reds. These kits are pretty inexpensive. They will give you all your primaries, and then also going to give you some things like various shades of green, various shades of blue, some of the more common mixes. It'll give you orange. These are not a real expensive paint. This particular brand is called Apple Barrel, and again, this was something I read about. That was a decent quality paint. I think once I actually get started and do a few pieces, see how the paints apply, how well they stick to things like PLA, I'll maybe try some other brands to give you guys an idea of how they compare. So that's paints. So now I have one last thing that I want to show you that I think is going to be a real saver of your home. So the last piece of equipment I wanted to talk to you guys about was a paint stall. This was a pretty neat setup. I did a lot of research on and found this on eBay. It was about $75. There are two versions of this. This one actually has LED lights on the inside, which I can hopefully won't blind you. So it has nice lights inside. It has a decent width for spraying. It also comes with a Lazy Susan in the middle, which is really nice for working on paint jobs. The cool thing about this is it basically collapses all up. So this whole top framework and sides and bottom, everything just sort of sandwiches up and folds into this little container here. So you've got a metal box. So this is all plastic construction, but it's very flexible. This is all steel. You got an AC adapter that plugs in here, a vent in the back, and like I said, this all floats flat into a little suitcase. So if you really need to put it away, that's really handy. Also, this kit comes with a few additional things. There is a piece that will attach onto the back of here. Then on that you can attach what looks almost like a dryer vent hose. And on the end of that, if you want to actually exhaust this outside, if you're using more toxic paints, then you can vent the exhaust like through a garage door or something like that to get rid of the fumes. Personally, I'm going to pretty much be doing acrylics for now, so that's not a concern. What I am going to do though, and I saw this online, a guy connected the circular part here in the back, and he wanted to know exactly how much ventilation he was getting and basically how much paint it was trapping. So he put that onto the back, took a piece of paper towel and basically just covered it with a single layer, used it for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks he took it off and showed it on camera and had very little paint residue at all. The reason for that is in the front of this, inside, you've got a couple of filters. That blue filter in the back is basically a sponge filter. That's the one that will have to be replaced most commonly. And I understand that those are very inexpensive at Lowe's or Home Depot. They've got some what's called pre-filter padding. I looked it up and I could get enough for a couple more pads for about $2.65. So again, this was about $75. And you did notice also the cart that I had everything on originally. That cart, my wife and I found online. It was about $70. And we just thought it was a great idea because essentially what we've got is a station on wheels. So if you're like me, I really didn't want to dedicate an entire area just for 3D painting. If I really ever end up doing a lot of it, which I doubt, but because between all my printing and everything else, I don't have that much time. But so if you don't have a place you want to make a permanent painting station, essentially you can have a station on wheels. So I think we're going to find that really useful. So that's it. I'm going to wrap it up for today. If you have any questions that I can answer, I'll be more than happy to. Like I said, I'm no pro. I've got a lot of advice from other people, but the bottom line is if you want to do this, you can get into it fairly inexpensively. You'll see that the compressor air tank combination that I found online was only 65 bucks. So I actually brought my compressor and my first brush for less than one of the kits would have cost, and it's going to be a great setup. So thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you on the next episode of Magic 3D Printing.
Oh, it's magic!